So now what's happening in Kakinada?
I had to fight out with my board and everybody to make a decision that it will be made in India. So the whole gravity-based structure, the whole shipyard, which is a gravity-based shipyard, is going to be constructed in Kakinada to create about 3,000 to 4,000 jobs. It's a Norwegian technology which will be brought to India and people will be skilled and able to do it.
I just can't wrap my head around 250,000 tons of concrete going inside the ocean.
It's a massive feat of engineering, and nowhere else in the world it has been built, only in Spain and in Norway before. It is going to get built in India now. Okay. So we are now going to start building the dry dock this year.
Just tell me, how much does it weigh? I just want to know.
So approximately somewhere around 150,000 tons, which is when it's empty. When it is fully full with gas, liquid, it is about 250,000 tons.
250,000 tons?
Correct. Approximately. It's like a New York City block, and then on the top of that is all the construction for the equipment. If the same battery manufacturer, which is creating so much of pollution while building those batteries, captured all the carbon and did not add even an ounce of carbon into the atmosphere, we're perfect.
Is that possible technically? Hello everybody, welcome to GAP, the Gaurav Arya Podcast. I have with me Swapan Kataria, CEO of Crown LNG. Swapan, a very warm welcome to our studio. And before we start grilling you about national security and energy security and what your plans are and those big billion-dollar investments, I want to ask you, what is Crown LNG? What does your company do actually?
Hi, Gaurav. First of all, thank you for having me here. And it's a very good question to start off with. Crown LNG is really an offshore infrastructure company specifically focused on liquid natural gas infrastructure. And we only focus on harsh weather conditions. The reason India was attractive to us and our technology is because on the east coast of India, there is a typhoon season every year. And floating solutions, which is the traditional way to do it outside of building it on land, was not becoming feasible because of the typhoon season, bringing wave heights of excess of 1.5 meters. And somebody who needs gas, somebody who needs supply for their power plants or their fertilizer plants or their industrial plants, they don't need it for a day and then they say, okay, I'll take it next month. They need it every day, 24 hours a day. And you have to be able to provide that. And Crown LNG has a solution which could make it possible even in the harsh weather of the east coast of India.
So how did your business start actually? What was the idea of Crown LNG?
So the idea was that we were looking at putting a project together in the Gulf of Mexico, which, by the way, Mr. Trump has changed that to Gulf of America.
Absolutely.
And that was many years ago, maybe about 10 years ago. And while we were building that, we realized that doing it on a floating barge solution in a hurricane zone was not possible to do it on a boat. When we started developing and looking at other solutions out there, we found the gravity-based structure, which was a Norwegian technology, which is utilized mostly in harsh weather, like in the North Sea, Atlantic Canada, and Arctic Russia. And when we looked at that, we said, hey, that can operate in the Gulf of Mexico, or I should correct myself, Gulf of America, then why cannot it work in other parts of the world? So we started developing an American project, and we started then looking at the whole world to scale it. And we found India, we found Vietnam, we found Scotland. And today, 10 years later, we are doing projects in 5 different countries is because those countries cannot take another technology. They've not been able to access or sell gas because they did not have any technology that could operate 365 days.
So tell me, Swapan, you're saying in difficult conditions, that is where Crown LNG goes. Mm-hmm. So you're saying if it's fair sailing, mm-hmm. if it's good winds, if there is sunshine, maybe not.
Maybe not.
But give me an area which has typhoons and 1.5 meter waves.
Or higher.
And let me, or higher.
Yeah, it can take 20 meter wave. It is already operating in 20 meter waves in North.
How does this work? I still haven't understood. You have to explain to me in the language that I can understand. For our viewers, simple, non-technical, how does this technology, what does Crown LNG bring to the table? What do you do that is so unique?
Let me try to paint a picture in a few words. So imagine a ship.
Okay.
Just cut off the front and the back of the ship and try and picture a whole box. When you look at that box, now instead of making it out of metal, we build the whole box with a concrete.
Okay.
So with that concrete, the gravity pulls it down and sits it on the seabed. And while it is sitting on the seabed, does not matter what happens to the weather all around, it can operate through a hurricane, through a typhoon, through high wind conditions, through high wave conditions, and can supply product to the end user 365 days.
So you're saying because the waves are on top and maybe there is lesser movement on the seabed.
So there is no movement on the seabed for a gravity-based structure. A ship will go up and down based on higher wave or a lower wave.
Or wind.
Or wind.
Yeah.
But the gravity-based structure sits like an LNG island. We actually call it an LNG island in our office. So it's really a man-made island which has liquid molecules of LNG, liquid natural gas, inside the belly. And on the top side is the power plant. It's your accommodations, it's your heli deck, it's your flare stack, and it's got the regasification or liquefaction or hydrogen, whatever you want to run as a plant on top side. So, and then that is connected through a subsea pipeline and a subsea cable to shore.
Amazing.
So giving you an example would be Andaman Nicobar Islands. So let's say Andaman Nicobar Islands needed a 365-day supply of gas and electricity, and you cannot find a place to put it on land because the waters are very choppy and the water depth is not 20 meters. So for LNG to operate, to bring the vessels in, you have to have 15 to 20 meters of landfall point depth. It does not exist. Then you have to look for something which can stay offshore, can give you a 365-day guarantee, right? And be connected through a subsea cable, giving you electricity and gas without interruption.
Wow.
That's where Crown comes in.
Excellent. Now, before we came in front of the cameras, we were sitting in my room and we were discussing why you think, what I'd like to call non-traditional security. So food, water, energy. Mm-hmm. And you think that, no, energy is the primary driver or something that matters the most when national security is concerned. Obviously, you have a very keen eye for geopolitics because geopolitics and oil go together. Geopolitics and gas go together.
Yes.
You cannot separate the two. I'd like your views. Why do you think it is a national security imperative for India? Why do you think so?
I think for a growing market like India with 1.4 billion and having 350 million people trying to look for jobs, the youth coming up in the next 10 years to 15 years, I think one of the most important things for India is to create jobs. And in order to create jobs, they need industry. And in order to create industry, they need energy. You cannot have anybody commit to come to India and set up a $2, $3, $5 billion project without having the guarantee that they'll have electricity to run it. And that cannot happen till the time you've got oil, gas, coal, hydrogen. You pretty much have wind, solar, you name it. India has to grow every field of that energy mix to be able to cater to the huge youth population that is going to start looking for a job in about 10 years from now. To me, if youth did not have a job, that is, I think, a bigger risk than not being able to build a tank. I'm not saying that's not important either. Tank might be important today, but having the youth stand up for India in the years to come and decades to come is equally important. Cannot be.
I agree with you.
So to me, I think I relate energy security to industrialization, and industrialization is to jobs, and that brings us to the 5 trillion to 10 trillion economy.
Absolutely. Now, you're very passionate about the AI revolution in India, right? And you're saying it requires clean, uninterrupted energy.
100%.
Now, where does your organization come into it?
So I think if you look at the ability to give uninterrupted supply of electricity, let's start there.
Okay.
I think the first thing that would come to any person who's got an indigenous background would be coal. Because India has large reserves of coal. India has the ability to bring more coal in from friendly countries. And access has been developed, ports have been developed, infrastructure is there, railway networks have been developed. So coal is something which comes first to your mind. But if you look at the international diaspora on pollution and on carbon controls, coal doesn't fit in. So what is the next best thing that can give you uninterrupted supply? So
I'm sorry to interrupt you. What you're saying coal doesn't fit in is you're talking about reducing carbon footprint. And all of us have those commitments.
Exactly.
Every country.
Exactly. And I think it's something that we all have to be responsible for. We cannot increase more carbon influx into the atmosphere. So if we had to choose to control that, how are we going to do it? If we need electricity uninterrupted. At the same time, we have to control carbon. I think the only thing that fits the mold, primarily in a good cost factor or a decent cost factor, I think it's still going to be a little more expensive, but it's a decent cost factor, is gas. And gas, unfortunately, India has very limited of. So the only way we can do it is to building import terminals and improving our capacity to import more. Because today we have so much capacity that is not being utilized because of the international costing, because the government doesn't have call it a power purchase plan. If there was an average price, so let's say we've got 80% in coal, give it maybe another 5 to 6% in gas. We've got nuclear, we've got solar, we've got wind. If you put that all together, when generally you would speak to someone, they'll say, solar is available at, below 3 rupees. Why would I pay 8 rupees for gas? I think that's a wrong way of looking at it, because you have to average it out, because you cannot get only one thing and survive on it. Tomorrow, if let's say coal is not coming out, or the wind is not blowing, or the sun takes a holiday for a couple of days, not working 8 to 10 hours a day, sun decides, okay, clouds are my friends and we want to have sunlight only for 2 hours. What happens then? Who fills up that gap? Without creating carbon.
Without creating carbon.
Yes.
Yes.
So if we want to address that, we all have to stand together and say, okay, we need to grow every potential source of energy that we can grow to not only fill up our needs, but also at the same time be responsible and reduce the carbon.
So you talk about the geopolitics of energy. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that there needs to be an India-US bridge.
Yes.
For energy. And you're saying that geopolitically speaking, we are strategic partners, right? And recently President Trump also told Prime Minister Modi that, coming back to the weapons bit, that you need to buy defense equipment from the United States of America. Prime Minister Modi is traveling. He's going there on the 13th of February. Mm-hmm. He'll be there for a couple of days and then he's going to come back. And obviously this partnership is bipartisan for most, and it's going from strength to strength. Mm-hmm. Now, you say about this bridge that there needs to be. What exactly is this bridge? I've heard about this. I need you to explain to me what this bridge is about, this energy bridge between the India and the US.
So I think when we talk about the energy bridge, we really talk about the supply of gas from United States to India. And I'll break it down from a geopolitics level. So when you cannot get, this is a fact, I think we both will agree, you cannot go and get something from someone who doesn't have it. Okay. So if India needs gas, that's a sure shot demand. It's a requirement that India has. Our honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has said repeatedly, and not just me repeating his words, that India's energy mix needs to go from 6 to 15% in gas. Right. It's a widely known fact. Even somebody who's not from the gas industry knows that.
And nobody disputes it, actually.
Yes. It is a requirement. Yeah, everybody understands that. But how do you do it? Now, when you decide, okay, we need to get to that point, you have to now see, okay, who has it? Qatar has it. Australia has it. US has it. Russia has it. Yes, there's Nigeria. Yes, there's Angola. There's always small little pockets coming from here and there. But I think United States of America is the largest producer and seller of gas. So when you think of it that way, I think it's sheer logic that when there is a big supply of something, it will obviously have a better pricing. So if you look at economics as well, US makes sense from that perspective. Deliverability, it makes total sense. You can feel safe that America will deliver on time, every time. The ability to deliver projects, because having funding access, because these projects are highly dollar intensive, highly engineering intensive, I think United States can offer that. So to us, it makes a total sense to look at America and then look at India and say, bridge these economies together. America has gas, India needs gas. It's a happy marriage. Can you not buy it from Qatar? Of course you can. But India's already...
We have been buying it from Qatar.
Yeah, that's what I was coming to. So India's been buying so much from Qatar. God forbid something happens in the Middle East. What happens to India's supply of gas? So you have to diversify. India is buying from other places as well in the world, but I think United States makes the total sense because there's nobody else who can give India the amount of gas that India needs.
I think, Swapan, you have a larger duty in this, apart from just being a very successful businessman, also to bridge the gap in the sense that there is a lot of distrust in India because, you see, Joe Biden comes and he says something, with all due respect to the American government, and then Trump will say, okay, I'm signing executive orders and overturning, and these are the first 80 executive orders I'm signing today. And like, for example, there was an effort to help Ukraine fight the war. For the past 3 years,
Correct.
Ukraine had been fighting a war largely funded by the Americans, largely funded
Correct.
by the Americans.
Yes.
Weapons like the Javelin, etc., given by the Americans. State-of-the-art weaponry which the world has never seen.
That's right.
They gave it all. President Trump comes and... he says, I'm stopping all of this. Stop now. Now, I agree with President Trump. I think what he's doing is absolutely correct.
Right.
But I would not think like that if my name had been Zelensky and not Gaurav Arya. Because there are people who question. Today we start buying. Now, why am I saying this? Today, let's say we start buying gas from the US and we say, of course, we must diversify. Of course, the Middle East is always rocky. Always rocky. Qatar is quiet. It's stable. But you never know in the Middle East. You never know in the Middle East, right? Much of the Middle East, at least the wealthier parts, are politically stable, but you never know. Right. They are not democracies. Yeah. Anything can happen tomorrow. So yes, I agree with you. We need to buy from America. We need to diversify. But there is this thinking in India. How would you address this? And you are of Indian origin. And it's very important that people like you step up and say that, hey, it's not like this. Okay, America is maybe not like that. Yeah. Not the way you're thinking. Right. And let me tell you, because I belong to both the worlds equally. Right. And maybe I can pitch this correctly to the common Indian, which says that when we needed weapons, and I'm giving you a brief background to this debate, and it's a very fiery debate in India. They say that, when we needed weapons to fight against the Chinese, against the Pakistanis, and we were a democracy, and we said we'll buy with whatever little money. We didn't have much money at that point in time, and we said we'll buy weapons from the United States of America. America said, no, we'll rather give it to the Pakistanis, we'll give it to everybody else. We're not going to give it to you. So we had to go to the Soviets because we needed weapons to fight, and people were attacking us. And the Soviets gave us weapons. Correct. And now the Russians are giving us weapons, and we are making some of our own weapons too. Now, how would you address that thought process? You are uniquely placed to do it.
I think I've grown up in India and I'm very uniquely or very well versed with this thing. I agree the word uniquely placed. I mean, I don't think today the way India is growing, you can view the fact that, you're buying it from Russia and not buying from US. I think India needs so much that it needs to buy from everybody. First of all. Secondly, I don't think at any point in time, I would like to say that we should make new friends at the cost of old ones. Right? I think Russia has always been a friend.
Very interesting.
The way I look at it. Okay. And I don't think we need to be in the same boat with America. I think America is more about economics. If it serves economic purposes, they will look at it. And that economic purpose does not have to be served by buying a defense equipment alone. It could be served by buying gas. It could be served by buying a ship. It could be served by buying minerals. I don't know, whatever India needs. I'm not very versed with the mineral industry, but I think they have rare earth minerals, which India is going to require in the future. My point being, you have to pick and choose your spots. You have to basically buy from everybody because America is only a percentage of India's buying. I'm not saying India should be dependent 100% on America. And America is certainly not depending all its product to India. They've got 30 different countries that are buying from them. Similarly, India should buy from 30 different countries. America certainly, by the sheer volume that America has to sell, becomes a huge participant in it. You cannot avoid it if you want to get into a gas economy business and if you want to control your carbon. As far as defense equipment is concerned, I'm sure they make some things which, nobody else makes.
Absolutely. Right? There is no argument.
And if we need those things as India to secure ourselves from our immediate neighbors, I think we should consider it. And in order to top up that, I think it'll remain in my heart if I don't say it openly and frankly, because that's coming from my heart. I don't think I don't think America did a very good thing by supporting Pakistan against India. And now they're realizing maybe that they made a mistake and they're trying to correct that to make new friends with us.
President Trump did say as much.
And I think we have to give them an opportunity.
Absolutely. And one thing which I liked, what you said, Swapan, I think it makes a lot of sense that, not just confined to defense, have a very broad-based relationship with America. Buy gas,
exactly.
Buy products, sell products.
Exactly.
I think that is exactly what Trump is saying.
Yeah. And I think India is exporting a bunch of IT stuff, IT services to America. I think with AI launching, and I think that was one other question that you had from me earlier, we'll probably jump into it later. But I think with AI launching, I think India and US are inseparable because that artificial intelligence that America is looking to grow on, I think you need developers for it. You need back-end staff for it. You need people to support that cause. And India's got an army of people for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think it'll be a mutual thing. It's not just that we need gas or defense equipment from America. I think there's a long list of things that America needs from India too.
Absolutely.
So that'll be a relationship of economic convenience, I think, more than anything else.
You did mention that, Prime Minister Modi said that 15% of the energy mix should come from gas. And you're talking about this PM Modi's vision for 2030. First of all, what is this vision? And when you say 15%, I beg your pardon, of the energy mix must come from gas, what are you saying? If there is a broad-based 100% thing, so your energy requirements should be fulfilled 15% by gas.
Correct.
Are you saying that?
That's correct.
So who does India buy gas from apart from Qatar?
I think there are a bunch of
We bought something from the Russians?
Yes. Yeah. So Russia has always been a secondary supplier because, when you build these billion-dollar plants, you have to take long-term 20-year commitments. So Russia had already pre-sold most of its products to other countries, mostly in Europe, from their, Novatek side, from the Norwegian side, and then they have a plant on the Sea of Japan side, which pretty much supplies to China, Japan, and Korea. So before they build the plant, they've sold their product for 20 years. So India was not getting much from Russia. Because other people, due to sanctions, are not purchasing those products, India has the ability to buy it. But until now, I have not seen in the open market that India has purchased Russian gas.
Okay.
But
Russian oil, of course.
Oil is different.
Oil is different.
So I think the sanctions on oil and gas are a little bit different because the sanctions of oil, I think if I remember correctly, is dollar value related. So the sanctions said at one time that you cannot buy oil from Russia more than $60 a barrel.
Yeah, something like that.
But you could buy.
You could buy, but not over this price.
Exactly.
And that is when the sanctions kicked in.
Correct. But that is not the same for gas.
That's not the same for gas?
No. And I think that is where I think weaponizing energy is not a 100% great thing for America, because America is basically saying that, okay, Russia cannot sell it to you, but I can. Right?
Yeah.
I think India needs to buy from both, personally.
From both?
Yeah. I think India should not say no to Russia from buying product from them.
But India should not say no to America either.
Of course not. Why should
you buy from wherever you get a good deal?
Exactly. If it makes economic sense for an Indian consumer, you make a deal. That's what the need is, and it also diversifies the supply.
Absolutely. So this PM Modi's Vision 2030. I'd like you to expand on this, please.
Sure. I'll explain it to you in a different way, from a different perspective.
All right.
So when we look about gas distribution in India, right? The International Gas Union says that a country like India should typically have about 1 million ton per annum of requirement for every 5 million people in gas. And in order to be a gas economy, you have to have 38% penetration of gas. When you say penetration, you need to have power plants running on it. You've got to have city gas distribution for cooking gas for people in their homes. You have to have supply to the industrial sector and the petrochemical plants. You have to have supply to fertilizer plants. And then you have to have supply for transportation. So these are the 5 major verticals for distribution of gas. Now, India needs, at 1.4 billion people, about 270 million tons of gas equivalent every year in order to become a gas economy. We're far from it right now. In order to get to that 15%, we need to be at about 110 million tons. As of today, India is only at about 42 to 47 million ton.
Okay. So you're saying more than twice.
So
more than
just to get to 15%, we have to go 2.5 times.
Okay. 2.5 times, yeah.
2.5 times. So we have to get to 100 to 110 million tons of import capacity and international buying contracts to be able to get to 15%. I don't think we're anywhere close to it because our project is 7.2 million tons, which is on the east coast of India. And even if I look at the other 5 expansions going on in India right now, out of which 4 are serious, the 5th one is not. Even if you calculate all of that, you're hardly going to get to 75 million tons. So you still have to build another 30 to 40 million tons just to get to 15%. Forget about being at 38%.
All right. And diversify.
Of course, that supply has to be diversified. And not only, I think there are new countries coming up. Argentina is coming up. We are bringing a whole delegation from Timor at the India Energy Week that we are talking to. They have the ability to support India as well. And we are discussing that with them. We are also discussing with even smaller countries which have, areas available either in Congo or in Croatia even, where offshore gas is available. Now, one thing important that I want to mention when I say offshore, this is also one of the biggest things that we see Crown progressing into, is that there is a lot more development in oil and gas sector going on offshore than onshore. And that is primarily related to permitting. Okay. So if you had to permit an oil field on land right now, it's a far more tedious job than to do it on offshore.
I would have thought otherwise, actually.
Yeah, no, engineering and building and cost-wise, it's more difficult on offshore.
Yes.
But ease of permitting is actually more difficult on land.
Ease of permitting is more difficult on
Yes.
land. Okay. This I have understood. Now, what's happening in Kakinada?
So Kakinara, I think, is
Andhra Pradesh.
Yes.
What's happening there?
So that's where we have our 7.2 million ton facility.
And you're saying
coming up.
thousands of people get jobs?
Yes. So this was actually a very important point in my life because we could have comfortably constructed our GBS in the Philippines or in Dubai.
Okay.
But I had to fight out with my board and everybody to make a decision that it will be made in India. So the whole gravity-based structure, the whole shipyard, which is a gravity-based shipyard, is going to be constructed in Kakinara to create about 3,000 to 4,000 jobs. And that, mind you, that technology is coming to India. It will remain in India. It's a Norwegian technology which will be brought to India, and people will be skilled and able to do it. So when we go on from Kakinara to Haldia, for example, that is where we are aiming our next terminal.
Sure.
It is also going to be constructed there. We are aiming our third terminal for Vietnam, which will happen further down, which is in permitting stages right now in Vietnam. That'll be a 10 million ton facility will be constructed in Kakinada. So India will not only get, call it a shipyard, because, and that skill set doesn't exist, and it creates thousands of jobs for sure.
Excellent. So what is happening in Vietnam will be made in India and then shifted to Vietnam.
Correct, yes.
And then it'll be deployed in Vietnam.
That is 100% right, yes. And in the meantime, while we are doing this, we may get more opportunities. We're going to look at which can be constructed at the same yard. Because
you're talking about the gravity-based structure, which
so the structure gets
goes down.
So structure gets constructed in a dry dock. Okay. So we are now going to start building the dry dock this year.
Just tell me, how much does it weigh? I just want to know.
So approximately somewhere around 150,000 tons, which is when it's empty. When it is fully full with gas, liquid, it is about 250,000 tons.
250,000 tons.
Correct. Approximately.
That is 2.5 times the weight of an American Gerald T. Ford aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
What are you building? This is like a city or what?
Yeah, it's like a New York City block. It is 50 meters tall. So the concrete structure is 50 meters tall, 220 meters wide, and another 220 meters long, 120 meters wide. It's like a New York City block. And then on the top of that is all the construction for the equipment.
Because the way, as a Fauji, the way I sort of analyze this is 100,000 ton displacement nuclear aircraft carrier, which the Americans have, which is massive.
So this is 3 times the size of that in a way.
Yeah, 2.5, 3 times the size of an aircraft carrier, nuclear-powered aircraft carrier.
Yeah. It's a massive feat of engineering. And nowhere else in the world it has been built, only in Spain and in Norway before. It is going to get built in India now.
And when do you hope to start this project?
This year. We are hoping to break ground in the third quarter this year.
I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much.
So you're talking about a $1.2 billion investment. I'm talking about Crown LNG. Your company is talking about a $1.2 billion investment in India. And you're saying this will help take India to a $5 trillion economy. Can you tell us something about this investment, apart from what you're doing in Kakinada and other places? Haldi also you mentioned.
So let me first rephrase. Our $1.2 billion investment is only a small part of what we are trying to do. And there are hundreds of these that needs to be done to get to a $5 trillion economy. But if you picture it from a different perspective, we are bringing 7.2 million tons of gas into India. If you ask me, how do you perceive what is 7.2 million tons? How many industries can run into it? So 7.2 million ton can run probably the 4 largest steel mills of India, to give you a perspective.
Okay.
Right? And if you put it together, that's 60, I think anywhere between 40 and 60,000 jobs. That's only from one plant. Imagine if you had 10 of them. And that's what needs to happen in India, because those large industries cannot operate without energy.
These figures are staggering. I mean,
it's really big, yes.
I'm going to ask you to, you'll have to explain all this again. You're saying that you're talking about 750,000 tons of gas. Is that what you're saying?
7.2 million tons.
7.2 million, I beg your pardon. 7.2 million.
Yeah.
So, which is like 72 lakhs. So, approximately. Just for the local audience,
72 lakhs, yes.
Yeah. So, let us say that is the amount of gas you're getting. And what is the periodicity of this? Is it annual?
It's annual, yes.
It's annual.
So the way we say it is 7.2 MMTPA, which is million metric ton per annum.
All right.
And 1 ton more or less is 49 to 50 MMBTU.
Okay.
So if you multiply that from 7.2 million ton multiplied by 50, call it, that then you get the number of MMBTUs that go in.
Okay.
And then from there you calculate the joules and from say how much energy is actually needed and calculated to run the grid.
Swapan, the reason why I was asking you to clarify and expand on this is because when you said that India needs much more gas, and you're saying this can run 4 steel plants, large steel plants. As an example.
Yeah.
Large steel plants.
Correct.
But then, taking into account India's population, you would need to have hundreds upon hundreds of such large industries to give everybody employment.
100% right.
Right?
Yeah.
Hundreds upon hundreds.
That's what scares me, because I don't think enough decisions are being made to make sure that happens, even a part of it. Like, I think one of the biggest things that, the politicians and the bureaucrats should be working on is just job creation, because that job creation thought will create all the other things that are needed to get there. And energy will become an obvious part of it, because without that, you can't do it.
Sure. Now tell me, what are your future plans?
So,
Kakinada, yes. Haldia, yes. Vietnam, you've told us about.
That's right.
What are your future plans?
So we're doing so 2 other projects that I haven't mentioned. We are already building one project in the final stages of approval is in Scotland.
All right.
So in Scotland, we are doing a 5 million ton import facility for LNG and a 2.4 gigawatt gas-fired power plant parallel to it. There's also a carbon capture facility that's going in, and also hydrogen production there, which we can do in India as well, or we can help other people do it, whoever's going to buy gas from us to run their power plant. But I think we are only looking at more sustainable industries, people who can understand how carbon capture is. So let me talk a little bit about carbon capture. In the oil industry, carbon capture has been a part of their industry forever. So what they do is they bring the oil out, they keep the oil, everything else, including gas and carbon, they just put it back. It's called sequestration. And that, in a way, is carbon capture, because it's not being let out at the atmosphere. Now there are different technologies that are coming up where they're, collecting carbon pretty much from industries and sending it to empty oil fields into maybe deep sea. Drilling sites which are now empty are being utilized to sequester that gas that they're collecting from different cities or industries. I think industry is now growing into more carbon capture technologies, and I think if we can get to that point, it'll be a perfect mix. Let me paint the picture in a different way. You have battery cars these days, right? Now, battery cars are not creating any pollution when they're going around in the city. It improves your city life. Breathing in Delhi was a big challenge last time when I was here. Today is much better. But have you ever thought that, okay, the electricity that's generated to charge that battery car,
where does it come from?
Is it creating carbon, that industry? Nobody questions that, but it is creating carbon in a way,
yes,
if it is produced on coal.
Yes.
But if that coal plant was mandatorily asked to do carbon capture, that means you're running now a clean car from a clean plant. You don't have to worry about it. If the same battery manufacturer, which is creating so much of pollution while building those batteries, captured all the carbon and did not add even an ounce of carbon into the atmosphere, we're perfect.
Is that possible technically?
So now technologies are coming up which are possible, but this is where I see India lacking, because India is not giving enough attention, investment dollars to development projects. Everybody you go to, they say, oh, where was this technology used before? And then you tell them that, buddy, there was no demand for this technology earlier. How do you expect this to be used somewhere else? And most of the Indian companies that we've spoken to, even on carbon capture, unless it becomes mandatory, I don't think they'll do it, unfortunately.
Isn't that the case everywhere? No.
In the West, there's a carbon tax.
There's a carbon tax.
So in order to avoid, now then that gives you a number. So let's say, I'm running a plant which is creating 1 million tons of carbon every year, and I'm paying $50, call it, for every ton of carbon that's going out. I have to pay $50 million. Now, if I get somebody coming to my door and saying, hey, give me $30 million and I'll capture all the carbon for you, makes sense. I have to pay 50 as a carbon tax. Now I have to pay 30 to this person.
You save 20.
You save 20 still.
Everybody wins.
At the same time, everybody wins. But in India, it's not the case. There is no carbon tax. There's no mandatory need by the government. So nobody's doing it.
Understood.
So maybe your, channel could when it goes out to the people, maybe you can do a special on carbon capture maybe one day, which would help India's energy security as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of our podcast. Thank you very much. Swapan, you're here with us. You spoke to us and we had this lovely chat. I just can't wrap my head around 250,000 tons of concrete going inside the ocean.
When it's ready, I'll invite you to come
I want to
on
see
the
this.
opening day, and I'd love to take you there.
Yeah, I want to see this because
It's a massive thing. It's not a small thing. It's
I want to
huge.
see this. I'm going to come with my crew and I'm going to film it.
It would be a pleasure to have you there.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, with Swapan Kataria, CEO, Crown LNG, and he spoke about a lot of things. And what specially fascinated me was this entire idea. You know, he said that there is a Prime Minister Modi's vision of having 15% gas as part of the energy mix. And that is how India progresses, because gas fuels your progress. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I'm going to be back again next week with a very special guest. Till then, Jai Hind, and thank you for watching. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Gaurav, for having me.